Okay, let's take a look at this little lawsuit I'm putting together here. Hopefully I can convince some type of employment or civil rights lawyer to pick this up because, well, I've done a little bit of investigative journalism on my own situation, and I think that it merits some investigation or this lawsuit, and that's why I put this together, and I hope that it finds its way to justice and accountability. Let's just take a look at it. It's a rough draft. It doesn't matter. It's really nothing, just something I put together, and we'll see if it makes sense to anybody, with especially with all the executive orders that have been rolled out. In the United States District Court for such and such District of Missouri, Jonathan Miller, the plaintiff, versus Comcast Corporation, the defendant. This would be a civil action. There'd be a number on it. This is the complaint, the nature of the action. This is a civil action brought by the plaintiff, Jonathan Miller, plaintiff or Miller, against defendant, Comcast Corporation, Comcast or defendant, to recover damages and obtain other relief for defendant's unlawful and retaliatory actions. These actions include retaliation for raising COVID-19 safety concerns in violation of Section 11C of the Occupational Safety and Health Act, OSH Act, 29 U.S.C. 660C, creation of a hostile work environment based on retaliation and discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI training, violating Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII, 42 U.S.C., wrongful termination, negligence, and breach of duty of care for failing to provide a safe working environment during a public health crisis, harassment based on protected characteristics, breach of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, and failure to conduct a proper investigation into the plaintiff's whistleblower retaliation complaint, resulting in an obstruction of justice. This case raises significant issues of public interest concerning workplace safety during a public health crisis, the protection of whistleblowers, and the ethical and moral obligation of employers, especially large corporations and government contractors, to their employees and the public they serve. Jurisdiction and venue. This court has jurisdiction, would be filed probably where I worked at my office in Blue Springs, Missouri. Plaintiff Jonathan Miller is an individual residing in, I live in another place now. He was employed by Comcast as a Technician 3 in the independence market from pretty much August 2018 until December 2020. Defendant, Comcast Corporation, is a corporation with its principal place of business at Blue Springs, Missouri. Comcast is a significant government contractor, receiving substantial funding from various federal agencies and is therefore subject to heightened obligations under federal law, including adherence to workplace safety standards, civil rights protections, and non-discrimination policies. Here's some factual background. The plaintiff's employment and performance. Plaintiff was employed by Comcast as a Technician 3 in the independence market from dates till dates. Throughout his employment, plaintiff consistently met or exceeded performance expectations, as evidenced by positive performance reviews and commendations from supervisors. For example, on this particular review, the plaintiff received a performance review stating relevant phrases. The review was conducted by my different supervisors, specifically mentioned. Here's some examples. Positive performance, including specific dates, descriptions. I have exhibits of those actually I've attached to this. Comcast as a government contractor. Comcast is a significant government contractor receiving substantial funding from various federal agencies. As such, Comcast is subject to heightened obligations under federal law, including adherence to workplace safety standards, civil rights protections, and non-discrimination policies. These heightened obligations underscore the ethical and moral imperative for Comcast to prioritize employee safety and well-being. The COVID-19 pandemic, safety concerns, and shifting of responsibility. The COVID-19 pandemic presented unprecedented health and safety challenges for essential workers, including those employed by Comcast. Plaintiff, as a technician entering customers' homes, faced significant risks of exposure to the virus. Plaintiff was particularly concerned due to having a newborn daughter and a partner with a pre-existing kidney condition, placing them at heightened risk of severe illness from COVID-19. Comcast, while publicly stating its commitment to employee safety, effectively abdicated its responsibility by delegating risk assessment to individual technicians. Instead of implementing clear and enforceable safety protocols, Comcast instructed technicians to use their quote-unquote discretion to determine if a customer's home was safe to enter. This policy was a mere facade designed to shift liability onto employees while avoiding implementing meaningful safety measures. This delegation of responsibility placed an unreasonable burden on plaintiff and other technicians, creating a situation where prioritizing safety could be met with punishment, as demonstrated by the subsequent retaliation against the plaintiff. This decision by Comcast demonstrates a disregard for employee well-being and raises serious ethical concerns. On July 7, 2020, 7:54 a.m., the initial email of concerns. On July 7, 2020 at 7:54 a.m., plaintiff sent an email to his leadership team, Tyrell, Troy, Brian, Dale, and John, expressing specific safety concerns. Customers are not respecting our social distancing protocols. I have asked multiple customers to please step back and give me the 6 feet that we are supposed to have between us, and they have outright refused. I am concerned that the masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer we have been provided are not enough to keep us safe. I am terrified of bringing this virus home to my newborn daughter and my partner who has pre-existing kidney condition. Comcast has continued to give mixed messages to different team leaders and our technicians and customers about what our expectations are related to COVID-19. Plaintiff also proposed potential solutions. Could we pair the technicians who are comfortable working inside with those who would prefer to work outside? I would be willing to take an unpaid leave of absence until it is safer to return to work. This email demonstrates a good faith attempt to utilize the discretion purportedly granted to him by Comcast. Attach Exhibit B, copy of email dated July 7, 2020 at 7:54 a.m. July 7, 2020, 8:07 a.m. Immediate retaliation. At 8:07 on July 7, 2020, just 13 minutes after sending his email, plaintiff received a text message from his supervisor stating, "Go home." This immediate adverse action strongly suggests a retaliatory motive. Attach Exhibit C, screenshot of text message dated July 7, 2020 at 8:07 a.m. Subsequent events. July 17th through 24th, 2020, emails with HR and performance concerns. On July 17th, 2020, at such and such time, plaintiff emails Ms. Vargas stating, quote the email where I expressed the concern about inaccurate metrics. Attach Exhibit D, copy of email dated July 17, 2020. On July 24, 2020, at such and such time, the plaintiff followed up with Mrs. Vargas, further articulating his concerns. Quote the email where you explain the impact of COVID-19 safety protocols. Attach Exhibit E, copy of email dated July 24, 2020. Describe Ms. Vargas's inadequate responses and attach them as exhibits. July 20th, 2020, email to Steve Burke and contact with Janelle Berquist. On July 20th, 2020, at such and such time, plaintiff emailed Steve Burke, Comcast CEO, expressing concerns about retaliation and the lack of alternative accommodations. In the email, plaintiff stated, quote, the relevant portion of the email to Steve Burke, attachment Exhibit F, copy to email to Steve Burke, dated July 20th, 2020. Describe the contact with Berquist and attach any relevant documentation. Subsequent events continued. July 20th, 2020, contacting the media, workers' comp denial, and lack of consent. On July 22nd, 2020, plaintiff contacted KCTV5 to report his concerns. On July 24th, 2020, plaintiff received a denial letter for his workers' compensation claim citing no physical injury. Critically, plaintiff did not consent to the filing of this workers' compensation claim on his behalf. Includes specific evidence of this lack of consent, a statement from you that did not authorize. I have emails in there that show this. Attach Exhibit G, copy of workers' compensation denial letter dated July 24th. Exhibit H, evidence of lack of consent for workers' compensation filing. This unauthorized filing demonstrates Comcast's disregard for plaintiff's rights and potentially constitutes an attempt to undermine plaintiff's other legal claims. Discriminatory DEI training. Plaintiff was subjected to mandatory DEI training on when they were doing that training. Training materials contained a lot of anti-white training and discriminatory and offensive content. I can be really specific. The training materials included a slide titled Understanding Cultural Differences, which contained a chart that stereotyped various racial groups with inaccurate and offensive generalizations. Attached Exhibit 1, copies of discriminatory training materials. This training created a hostile work environment and further contributed to the discriminatory and retaliatory atmosphere. I was unable to have access to that evidence, but I'm sure we could pull those training materials, and I could tell you exactly what, they said that was really, really bad. December 6, 2020, wrongful termination and obstruction of investigation. On December 6, 2020, plaintiff was abruptly terminated from his employment with no prior warning, explanation, or opportunity to respond to any alleged performance issues. Critically, this termination occurred before the completion of the OSHA investigation into plaintiff's initial retaliation complaint. This premature termination severely prejudiced plaintiff's ability to present his case and prevented a full and fair investigation. This action by Comcast constituted an obstruction of justice and intentionally deprived plaintiff and the investigating agency of the ability to properly investigate his claims. This termination also occurred the same week plaintiff closed on his first home, a fact known to Comcast, demonstrating a particularly egregious disregard for plaintiff's well-being and a malicious intent to cause him significant financial and emotional distress. Attached Exhibit J, Notice of Termination dated December 6, 2020. Attached Exhibit L, Documentation of home closing date. EEOC, OSHA investigation and inadequate findings. Plaintiff filed a complaint with the EEOC, OSHA, on when I did the subsequent investigation conducted by so-and-so was inadequate and failed to properly consider the evidence of retaliation, hostile work environment, and wrongful termination. The investigation's findings did not find sufficient evidence of retaliation. Plaintiff believes this inadequate investigation was directly related to his unlawful termination prior to the investigation's conclusion, preventing a full and fair review of the evidence. Plaintiff seeks to have this investigation reopened and conducted thoroughly and ethically. Attach Exhibit K, copy of EEOC OSHA findings letter. The impact on plaintiff's life, forbearance, and a home purchase. Comcast's action had a devastating impact on plaintiff's life. The stress and anxiety caused by the retaliation, the hostile work environment, and the eventual termination significantly affected plaintiff's emotional well-being and his ability to provide for his family. As a direct result of his termination, plaintiff experienced significant financial hardship, forcing him to seek forbearance on his mortgage payments. This forbearance added further stress and uncertainty to plaintiff's life. As it threatened his ability to retain his newly purchased home, which closed on the same week that they terminated me. Comcast was aware of plaintiff's pending home purchase during the week he was terminated, demonstrating a particularly egregious disregard for plaintiff's well-being and malicious intent to cause him significant financial and emotional distress. Attach Exhibit M, Documentation of mortgage forbearance. Causes of action. Count 1, retaliation and violation of the OSH Act, 29 U.S.C. 660C. Plaintiff incorporates by referencing all preceding paragraphs. Plaintiff engaged in protective activity under the OSH Act by raising good faith concerns about workplace safety related to COVID-19. Comcast subjected plaintiff to adverse employment actions, including being sent home on unpaid leave and subsequent termination because of his protected activity. A causal connection exists between plaintiff's protected activity and the adverse employment actions, as evidenced by the close temporal proximity between plaintiff's email and the supervisor's text message, as well as the termination occurring during a pending OSHA investigation. Comcast actions constitute unlawful retaliation and violation of Section 11C of the OSH Act. Count 2, creation of a hostile work environment and violation of Title VII, 42 U.S.C. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Comcast created a hostile work environment based on both retaliation for protected activity and discrimination based on specific protected characteristics, which we've already explained. The hostile work environment was created by the totality of the circumstances, including retaliatory actions taken against plaintiff for raising safety concerns, Comcast's failure to adequately address plaintiff's legitimate safety concerns, the discriminatory content and impact of the mandatory DEI training. The hostile work environment was sufficiently severe or pervasive to alter the condition of plaintiff's employment and create an abusive work environment. This hostile work environment had a particularly severe impact on plaintiff due to his concerns for his vulnerable family members during a public health crisis. Comcast's actions constitute a violation of plaintiff's rights under Title VII. Count 3, wrongful termination. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Plaintiff's termination was wrongful because it was retaliatory, lacked due process, and violated public policy. The timing of the termination, while the OSH investigation was pending, and the week of plaintiff's home closing, a fact known to Comcast, further supports the claim of retaliation and demonstrates bad faith and malicious intent. Count 4, negligence and breach of duty of care. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Comcast owed plaintiff a duty to provide a safe working environment. Comcast breached this duty by failing to implement reasonable safety measures to protect employees from COVID-19, failing to adequately address plaintiff's safety concerns, and shifting the responsibility of risk assessment onto individual technicians. As a direct and proximate result of Comcast's breach of duty, plaintiffs suffered damages. Count 5, harassment, under Title VII or applicable state law. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Comcast's actions, including the retaliatory actions and the discriminatory DEI training, constituted harassment based on protected characteristics, the discriminatory aspects of why it was racist. This harassment, also an attack on my religious beliefs, created an intimidating, hostile, and offensive work environment. Count 6, breach of implied covenant in good faith and fair dealing. Was that count 5? Count 5 was harassment. Count 6, breach of implied covenant in good faith and fair dealing. Plaintiff incorporates by referencing all preceding paragraphs. An implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing existed in plaintiff's employment relationship with Comcast. Comcast breached this implied covenant by acting in bad faith, retaliating against the plaintiff, shifting responsibility for safety assessments onto the plaintiff, and then penalizing him for exercising that discretion, failing to adequately address plaintiff's concern, and terminating plaintiff's employment without just cause, especially given the timing of the termination in relation to the plaintiff's pending home purchase. As a direct and proximate result of Comcast's breach of the implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, plaintiff suffered damages. Count 7, failure to conduct a proper investigation and obstruction of justice. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all preceding paragraphs. Comcast's termination of plaintiff's employment before the completion of the OSH investigation constituted an obstruction of justice and a violation of due process. This premature termination effectively deprived plaintiff and the investigating agency of the opportunity to gather and evaluate crucial evidence related to the plaintiff's retaliation claim. The failure to conduct a thorough and impartial investigation, compounded by the timing of the termination, resulted in a fundamentally unfair process that prejudiced the plaintiff's rights. Plaintiff respectfully requests that this court order the appropriate agency to reopen and conduct a full and fair investigation into plaintiff's whistleblower retaliation claims, taking into account all available evidence, including evidence that was not properly considered due to the premature termination. Damages. As a direct and proximate result of Comcast's unlawful conduct, plaintiff has suffered and continues to suffer substantial damages, including but not limited to lost wages and benefits, including back pay and front pay, in an amount to be proven at trial, emotional distress, mental anguish, pain and suffering, humiliation, and loss of enjoyment of life in an amount to be proven at trial, financial hardship caused by the termination, including the need for mortgage forbearance, potential foreclosure risks, and other associated costs and penalties in an amount to be proven at trial, damage to the professional reputation and career spot prospects. We can list any other damages specifically there if we'd like to. Prayer for relief. Wherefore, Plaintiff Jonathan Miller respectfully requests that this court grant the following relief. A judgment in favor of the plaintiff. Enter judgment in favor of plaintiff and against defendant Comcast on all claims asserted herein. B, reinstatement. Order defendant to reinstate plaintiff on his former position as Technician 3 or a substantially equivalent position with full restoration of seniority, benefits, compensation, and other employment rights, as if the unlawful termination had never occurred. C, compensatory damages. Award plaintiff compensatory damages in an amount sufficient to fully compensate him for all losses and injuries sustained as a result of defendant's unlawful conduct, including but not limited to back pay, including all lost wages, salary increases, bonuses, commissions, benefits, including health insurance, retirement contributions, etc. 401, how about my employee stock discount, and other compensation plaintiff would have earned had he not been wrongfully terminated. Front pay, representing future lost earnings and benefits if reinstatement is not feasible or desirable. Emotional distress, mental anguish, pain and suffering, humiliation, and loss of enjoyment of life. Financial hardship directly resulting from the termination, including expenses related to mortgage forbearance, potential foreclosure risks, and other financial burdens. Costs associated with seeking new employment. Any other economic or non-economic damages proven at trial. D. Punitive damages. Award the plaintiff punitive damage in an amount sufficient to punish defendant for its willful, malicious, reckless, and retaliatory conduct, particularly considering defendant's knowledge of plaintiff's pending home purchase at the time of his termination. Injunctive relief. Grant injunctive relief ordering the defendant to implement and enforce appropriate policies and procedures to prevent future violations of the OSH Act and Title VII, including but not limited to establishing clear COVID-19 safety protocols that prioritize employee safety, providing adequate personal protective equipment, and ensuring prompt and thorough investigation of employee safety concerns. Case: cease and desist from engaging in any retaliatory conduct against employees who raise safety concerns or engage in other protected activities. Revise its DEI training program to eliminate any discriminatory or offensive content and ensure that such training promotes a respectful and inclusive workplace. F. Reopening of investigation. Order the appropriate agency, for example OSHA or EEOC, to reopen and conduct a full, fair, and impartial investigation into the plaintiff's whistleblower retaliation claims, taking into account all available evidence, including evidence that was not properly considered due to the premature termination. G. Pre- and post-judgment interest. Award plaintiff pre-judgment and post-judgment interest on all monetary awards as provided by law. Attorney's fees and costs. Award plaintiff reasonable attorney fees, expert witness fees, and all other costs associated with pursuing this action as provided by law. I. Other relief. Grant such other and further relief as the court deems just and equitable. 7. Supporting evidence. The plaintiff intends to offer the following evidence in support of his claims. Exhibit A, copy of performance review, dated, I believe it's 2019. Exhibit B, copy of email to leadership team, dated July 7, 2020 at 7:54 a.m. Exhibit C, screenshot of text message from supervisor, dated July 7, 2020 at 8:07 a.m. Exhibit D, copy of email to Vanessa Vargas, dated July 17, 2020. Exhibit E, copy to email Vanessa Vargas, dated July 24, 2020. Copy F. Exhibit F, copy of email to Steve Burke, dated July 20, 2020. Exhibit G, copy of workers' compensation denial letter, dated July 24, 2020. Exhibit H, evidence of lack of consent for workers' comp filing. We have evidence to back that up. Exhibit I, copies of discriminatory DEI training materials if applicable. Notice of termination. Exhibit J, notice of termination dated December 6, 2020. Exhibit K, copy of EEOC OSHA findings letter. Exhibit L, documentation of home closing date. And Exhibit M, documentation of mortgage forbearance. And then we can list any other exhibits, such as witness testimony, expert reports, etc. This completes the entire lawsuit. You should now have all three parts. Please combine them into one document, and so that's what I've done, and that's what I get. And let me know what you think. I'm Mr. John Lee. Like and subscribe. Dear God, please help me with this, because I need your help. In Jesus' name, amen.